back to my channel. Today's video is going to be showing you how I set up my home studio and how to do that if you have a home studio yourself and you're wondering how to set something up. So I'm just going to start with some basics today, and I'm going to show you guys exactly what I use, and I'm going to list all of the items in the description box below, so if you'd like to have a look at those or purchase those later on, you can go there and take a look. So I want to start with a few of the things that I first used for my home setup. I do have quite a basic home setup overall. I would say that I work with pretty minimal items, which is quite good for someone who is starting out. And I'm going to keep it quite simple today, guys, so it's just going to be how to set up your own home studio. To start off with, the thing that I use probably the most in my entire setup is this modifier for my lights. And it's the Elinchrom X-Lite Octabox, and I do forget the dimensions, but I will put it in the video and in the description box below. So this is a really good light modifier for a very simple setup, and it's very versatile because you can use different sort of sub-modifiers, I guess you could call them, to alter the light and how it comes through. So you can actually put diffusers on this. I do have a couple of diffusers, one for the inner and one for the outer, which will make the light very soft. My kit also comes with a honeycomb grid, which I tend to use quite often, and also a hood diffuser, which can center the light a lot more and focus it. So it's very versatile, it's great for portraits, and it is something that I use pretty much every time I do a photo shoot. Now I'm going to get straight onto my lighting that I use, and I use the Elinchrom D-Lite RX4s. This is kind of more of a beginner to intermediate lighting setup. I would say that I did start off with beginner to intermediate because a few years ago when I bought these lights, I was not very experienced with studio lighting. However, I had used Elinchrom previously in my college course. So I was already sort of familiar with how they looked, and I really wanted to start off with something that was a little bit less expensive. They were still probably around about $1,500, $1,400 for the entire kit, as far as I remember, going back a few years ago. But overall, I think they really do the job quite well. I do really like using these. However, in future years, I will hopefully upgrade. But for now, home studio setups, these are really great. So I have two of these in my kit that I use. However, I would say about 80% of what I do in home studio setups are one light and a reflector. So I'm actually going to get onto the reflectors that I use right now. So this is the reflector that I actually use the most often. It's quite small. Once again, can't remember the dimensions, but I will put them in the video for you. It is a silver and gold sided reflector. I got this on eBay going back probably nearly 10 years ago, and I think it was around $5. So it actually works really, really well for what I need it for. And usually I will place mainly the silver side. I don't use the gold side very often at all because it does tend to throw quite an orange cast over skin tones. But I do use the silver for helping the highlights to really pop, and actually just holding it under the model's face to help bring that light in underneath and just fill in any shadows that might look a little bit funny. I do tend to use butterfly lighting, so with my Octabox I will generally have that on the light stand quite high and angled downwards, and that will help bring in those little shadows underneath the model's nose and underneath the chin, so it creates that really nice lighting for beauty photographs. The pro about having a reflector as well as a one light setup is that it adds a little catch light in the model's eyes too without having to use an extra light for that, so these are really, really good to pick up, and they're quite cheap online. This is the other reflector that I have, and it is quite large, as you can see. All the details will be in the description box. This one is a 5-in-1, so you've got the white on this side, you've got the gold on this side, and on the inside there is a diffuser, which is quite transparent, and it's really good for a lot of outdoor shoots, but you can still use it in studio to potentially diffuse lights if you don't have diffusers. Or there's also the silver side inside that you can flip onto the outside of the diffuser, and the black as well. These actually work really well if you don't have V-flats. If you can get like little stands for them, they're really, really easy just to have to the side of the model if they're sitting down, and you can help reflect light back in or help absorb the light if you're using the black side on the interior. The good thing about these ones as well is that you can use it if you've got more than one model. Because they're quite big, you can help really reflect a lot of that light back into the shot. And I wouldn't say I use this quite often because it is so big and I'm working with quite a small space here, but overall this is really good for more than one person, and if you're using it more as how a V-flat would be used. So along with my lighting kit, I've also got a couple of stands that came with that, and a few different sub-modifiers, which I will show you guys in just a second. But I'm just going to let you guys know that I do use a backdrop stand from eBay, and it is really, really cheap. I think I might have spent around $30 on overall. It could have been less, it could have been more. It was quite a long time ago that I did buy them. But they're quite cheap online, and it has worked for the time that I've had them. I've probably had them around 6 years, and they really do the job. I usually just use cloth backdrops like this. You can buy these types of fabrics from Spotlight in Australia, which is more of a sewing fabric store. So these are really quite cheap. I just usually go for the cheapest fabrics. As long as they're not very see-through, then they're usually fine for what I need them for, or if they're too reflective, sometimes they don't work either. But something like this in more of a canvas fabric is perfect, and I do have quite a few different colors in this. So that's kind of a cheaper way to get around potentially buying a paper backdrop roll. I have started collecting some paper backdrop rolls, and they are the Savage Universal ones. So these paper backdrop rolls can be a lot larger, and I actually get the half rolls. So usually the full rolls I think can be over around 3 meters, don't quote me on that, but they are quite long, and unfortunately for my house size at the moment, it doesn't work. So I've been getting the half rolls. And this is one of the colours that I've got in this. I cannot remember the exact colour on that one, but I will write it down in the description box. I do really like the paper backdrops. They're really great, obviously, because you don't have creases. Just a little trick with the fabric cloths though, I usually just get a spray bottle and start spraying them once I've hung them up on the backdrop stand. And if you just wait a little while for it to dry, that will hopefully get rid of a lot of the creases that are in the fabric. Sometimes, depending on the fabric, that doesn't work and you may need like a steamer. But yeah, that usually works for me, and it's a very cheap and quick way of getting rid of creases. The reason I don't also have a lot of paper backdrop stands at the moment is because they are quite expensive. I think this one for the half roll was about $70, $75 in Australia. So they are a little bit on the more expensive side. I am collecting them very slowly. They do make a difference though in terms of colour and really getting that nice effect as a backdrop, so I would recommend them. However, if you don't have the money to go buying paper backdrops just yet, fabric does the job very well too. So back to my lighting kit for a moment as well. I also have 2 square softboxes that came with my Elinchrom lighting kit. I do have the Octabox, obviously, that I use the most. The square softboxes I don't tend to use a lot with my beauty shots, only because if I'm using them to light the model, I don't particularly like a square catch light. That's just personal preference though, and some people might find that that's not an issue for them, which is fine too. If I was to use the square softboxes, I would mainly use them for lighting the backdrop, to get that softer light on the backdrop and really illuminate that, if I was just using a one light setup for the model. However, I do also have these modifiers for the Octabox, and this is the diffuser. So this would go over the Octabox and diffuse the light. So that would just help make the light quite soft and nice and pretty, really great for beauty shots. And you can actually use this. Now this is an inner diffuser that you can have in the middle of the Octabox, and that would get that extra layer of diffusion if you want really soft light, or even just like a thin layer if you don't want to use that diffuser and just this instead. So this is really good and works interchangeably with the other diffusers that I'm going to show you right now. So this one is a honeycomb grid, and this will help prevent a lot of light spill and really direct the light a lot more. It gives you that really nice crisp look. You can put this by itself or in conjunction with the other diffusers that I just showed you. So you can really mix and match and see which lighting that you really like to use. I personally really like to use this by itself, and I actually really love using it by itself because it gives a really nice crisp highlight on the model's face, and I really love that with a lot of beauty shots. It really helps the skin look very dewy. And this is the other diffuser that I'm going to show you guys now. This is called a hood diffuser. So you've got 2 sides here. You've got a silver side and then a black side, and you can attach it either way to the edge of the Octabox. So if you've got the black side on the middle facing inwards towards the Octabox, it's going to help absorb some of that output of light. And if you have it this way, it's going to really illuminate the image that you're taking a lot more. So that's going to help the light bounce around a lot more in the softbox and make it a little bit brighter. I wouldn't say this is my favorite technique to use. I definitely prefer the honeycomb grid specifically for my beauty portraits, but I definitely recommend giving this a go if you want to help direct your light a little bit more. It does help prevent a lot of light spill. So as you can see, it's in a circular kind of fashion, and it will help block any extra light that's getting spilled out into the sides of the Octabox. So that's really good for that. And the last thing I'm going to show you guys here with all my gear is just a stool from Kmart. I think this one might have been about $20 or so. This is really just a good height for the model to sit on, and I usually do get my models sitting when I'm getting them to do beauty poses. I may potentially even have a small table if I can get my hands on one, just so they can rest their arms and do their poses a little bit more naturally. I do tend to find that that helps. So definitely I would recommend having a stool, because I've tried before on several occasions not having a stool and it feels that little bit awkward. It's also harder for shorter people like me. If you're working with tall models, you usually have to get them to crouch down or bend, and that's not very comfortable for them. So I definitely recommend purchasing a stool. So today we are actually doing this setup in my kitchen. I have been using this for quite a few photo shoots as of late, and I really do find that this is a good space for me. It's probably one of the biggest spaces in my apartment. I used to use my spare room, but it was a little bit smaller and a bit more cramped. And this area, I find that I can step back a little bit more if I have to when taking photos. So I want to show you guys now how I set up my home studio, and let's get into it.
To see all the pieces of me that I tried to bury. I can't conceive that you'd want to be here with all of my faults and the wounds that I carry. I don't believe that you care to see all the pieces of me, all the pieces of me. Only time will tell what we're made of. When I have your love, I don't really mind all the waiting if I got you. Only time will tell what we're made of. I feel like myself when I have your love. I don't really mind all the waiting if I got you. If I got you. If I got you, if I got you,
So guys, this is my general home setup, and this is how I would usually have it set up for my beauty portraits. Like I said, the Octabox is here and it is high and angled downwards to give that butterfly lighting effect on the model's face. And then generally I would either have this light either pointed towards the backdrop or potentially as a second fill light instead. I usually would use a square softbox if I was filling in the background, but if not, I just tend to use this very basic silver dish that came with my kit. So this is pretty much overall how I would have it. I also use the white wall, and you can actually make it grey if you don't want to light it. You can give that effect that it is a grey wall as well, which is quite versatile, so I don't have to use a piece of cloth or a sheet or anything like that, but that's something you can use if you don't have white walls in your house. So I really love using the kitchen as a setup. It's not very big though, so I do have to say OH&S is super important here. I have a few things cluttered down here. On a shoot, I would usually never have that as the case. I really try and keep a lot of the cables very spaced apart, and I want everyone that comes in here to be very careful when they're stepping around, because I don't currently have sandbags, and that's probably an important feature, or something quite heavy that you can weigh down the lights with, because there has been a few times where it is a bit scary. You do feel like you're going to knock a light over, and it's something that I would definitely recommend doing. That's something that I definitely have to get onto. But otherwise, this is pretty much my basic setup. As I said, I've got my reflectors over here. I would really use these and incorporate these into helping use them as either an extra catch light or a fill light. I also use the windows over here as a little bit of extra light. On some days where it's quite sunny, it can be a problem and it can cause some interesting weird shadows that I don't want in my portraits. So I usually will close them off if that's the case. However, I actually like incorporating a little bit of natural light into my shots, so usually the light that comes through these windows don't really bother me. It's quite good for my shots. So I just want to add in a few tips for any beginner studio photographers out there or anyone that's looking at having their own home setup. It's more of just a safety thing. A couple of tips would be just be careful if you're looking at buying lights that are a little bit on the cheaper side or don't have a reputable brand name. I've heard some pretty big horror stories of things going wrong with lights and things bursting into flames, so that's definitely not something that I want for anyone out there. Just do your research when it comes to actually buying the lights that you want. I definitely recommend for any beginners to go for something like I have with a beginner intermediate level with Elinchrom. Maybe look around for some of those bigger brands that tend to have those ranges, because at least you know you're getting that bit of a quality and safety assurance a lot of the time with those. A lot of lighting kits on eBay, I have heard some problematic things going wrong there, but it really depends on what brand you're buying and what you're after. Another thing that I would mention, and I think it's a really big one for beginners, if you do buy a lighting kit, these will generally come with the lights. They are caps to put over the lights to protect the bulb. Make sure that once your shoot is done and you're ready to put the lights away, make sure they cool down before you actually put the caps on, because these can melt off. And I've seen some pretty bad things actually happen at my college before when people actually put these on and the bulbs hadn't cooled down yet, so just be wary of that as well. Another good idea is if you put the lights on your stands and these are still on the lights, make sure you don't turn the power points on while these are still on the lights, because they will melt and it's not a very nice experience when that happens. So for those of you wondering as well, I do use a Canon 5D Mark IV and I generally use my 24-70mm f2.8L lens with Canon. I really do love that lens for beauty shots because it allows me to get a little bit further back and quite a bit closer up. I would also definitely recommend the Canon 100mm f2.8L lens. It is amazing. I have hired it on several occasions and it is a fantastic macro lens for very close-up macro beauty. Love it so much and definitely would recommend that for any aspiring beauty photographers out there. So guys, this is my setup and I really hope you enjoyed the video. As I said, all of the objects and items that I've talked about today are in my description box below, so you can go check them out there. A lot of them are affiliate links, so they do help supporting my channel and helping me to continue doing these videos. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please do. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!